Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to a special edition of the American Huddle. I'm Haley Outen alongside Andy Gresh. Andy, I can't believe it. It's championship week. It's finally here. We've been talking about this forever. We've got two pretty good teams that are going to battle it out for the conference title.
Haley, we do, and they're coming off of, well, one was a great football game. The other one not so much in terms of Memphis and UCF. But in a lot of ways, you know, we've spent weeks here talking about, okay, who's going to be there in the end? Who's going to be there in the end? And we keep whittling it down. And I think the conference has got to be happy because they've got two really good teams. And I think college football fans and fans of the American Athletic Conference are ready for a great conference title game this weekend.
Well, you mentioned it. Both of these teams won big this past weekend, but in different ways. That UCF-USF game, possibly one of the greatest college football games we've seen all year. It had that championship feel. It was. The winner took home the East Division title, UCF, but you just kind of felt like it was for all the marbles. How do you kind of channel all of the energy that was exerted in that game to have to get up to play yet another championship game this weekend?
Haley, I think for Scott Frost, it's kind of easy because he can say, look, we played a team that people think is a big boy in our league and is a big boy in the world of college football, and we were in a struggle and in a battle. So I think for Scott Frost, he's going to be able to not only get the attention of his kids by saying, hey, it's a conference championship game, but he's going to be able to get the attention of his kids because as much as they won the game, there's still a lot to clean up there, especially on defense. So I think channeling all that energy, it'll be pretty easy for Scott Frost to get the attention of his crew this week.
Well, on the Memphis side of things, they had already locked in that East Division title the week before. So this game last weekend, not meaningless against ECU, but in a lot of ways not a must-win either. But the Tigers did not sleep on the Pirates. They were up 49-0 at halftime. The starters got to rest, in fact, in the second half. But tough start for ECU. Kickoff return, Tony Pollard, and you can probably guess what he does with it.
Yeah, I mean, Tony Pollard to the house is almost like a weekly occurrence here in the American Athletic Conference. And look, Memphis had the West sewn up. They didn't have really anything to play for other than the proverbial pride, but there was the chance that they could host the American Conference Championship game. So I can understand them coming out and doing what they needed to do, but at the end of the day, Memphis just too much. Riley Ferguson was awesome. And again, Memphis on special teams, that's a difference maker that you have to deal with if you're going to play them.
Well, the Tigers picked up their 10th win of the season, another great year under head coach Mike Norvell, but they're heading back to Orlando, a place that they've already visited, in fact, a couple of times this year. They flew back to Orlando in September, ended up turning around and flying the plane home back to Memphis due to all of the hurricane trouble that we had to face in that month of September. Yep, and then they flew back out again on September 30th, and they had a pretty tough go against the Knights. Had to deal with some bad weather, but ultimately turnovers were the problem for Memphis in that game. Kind of interesting. You don't get to see a rematch every year in the championship game. Pretty cool.
No, and especially the way UCF won that football game 40-13, where they won it handily. You mentioned there were turnover issues for Memphis, and that was really maybe the first game where it was, okay, maybe Scott Frost has really got something rolling here. Because remember, they went to Maryland and beat another P6 school up on the road in Maryland, where they went there and really, I thought, put it on them pretty good. The score wasn't indicative as to how well UCF played that game, but at the end of the day, we came away at the beginning of October going, hey, maybe this UCF squad has the chance to do something special, and they're one win away from doing that.
Well, the Knights in that first game put up over 600 total yards, 350 of those coming on the ground. And on the Memphis side of things, the offense did struggle that day. As we mentioned, Ferguson threw 3 interceptions and also lost a fumble, so they'll have to clean things up offensively. Certainly not a team that you can afford to make many mistakes against.
No, and I think for Memphis defensively, we know they're going to be stressed. I mean, look, Haley, without really jumping ahead in the whole previewing the conference championship game, because I can't wait to do so, let's just call this the way it is. You've got two of the top scoring offenses in all of FBS football that are going to match up in the American Conference Championship game. So whichever team has the ability to get some important red zone stops, turnovers are going to be a real backbreaker, I think, in this game. And then there's Memphis with what they can do on special teams. So there's a lot of different storylines in terms of this American Conference Championship game. But the number one issue, I think, that will determine who wins and loses this game is turnovers, because we've seen it all year. UCF turned it over a little bit against USF. Look at what happened to them. And Memphis, At times they're up and down. They're going to throw some, but can they create some? That's going to be the big question in this AAC championship game.
Well, I know you're excited to preview this game, so let's get
All
to
right,
it.
let's just do it. I just went crazy on it. But, I mean, it's hard not to be excited for two of the top quarterbacks in college football this year matching up in Riley Ferguson and McKenzie Milton. We can start there because, again, when you talk turnovers, the football's going to be in those guys' hands a ton. And by the way, it's more than just throwing interceptions. You got to make sure you handle the football in the pocket. These are two defenses who at least have the ability to put some stress on the quarterback. So you better make sure you're handling the pill in the pocket well. And then if you make an interception, make an aggressive interception. Don't do one of these ping-ding-a-linging around where you throw it up in the flat and the next thing you know, someone's picking it off. Try to drive the ball down the field. Try to make a play so that there is some risk reward.
Well, you mentioned it, the battle of the quarterbacks, two of the top quarterbacks in the nation squaring off on Saturday. Kind of a veteran. I won't call McKenzie Milton a rookie, but he's only a sophomore. For Riley Ferguson, though, let's start there. As a senior playing in this championship game to win a title in his final year at Memphis, you have to imagine that the memories from the last time he was in Orlando are still pretty fresh. How do you think he's feeling this week as he's gearing up for this game?
I think he's got to be thinking not only can I win a championship, but I can help get this team into a New Year's Six bowl and have a chance to be able to impress some NFL scouts. I mean, let's be honest, quarterbacks now, I'm not saying they're coming out of college football and they're a dime a dozen, don't get me wrong. But when you play in an offense the way Memphis does, look at Paxton Lynch still getting opportunities in the NFL. So I think the system translates to the next level. So if you're Riley Ferguson, you're thinking, I'm going to win a conference championship game. I want to take my team to a New Year's Six bowl. And then it's maybe have a chance to go play in the National Football League. And if you play well in these big games, that goes a long way to convincing people you can play at the next level.
Well, on the other side of the ball, looking at McKenzie Milton, he certainly has taken some great strides since his freshman year, getting thrown into that starting job last year in Scott Frost's first year as the head coach. But for McKenzie Milton, he's been a pretty solid quarterback all year long. We definitely saw him challenged and tested in this USF game last weekend, but he kept it together, got his team back in the game, and ultimately they persevered there in the end. But what do you expect to see from McKenzie Milton on a pretty big stage here on Saturday?
I expect McKenzie Milton to play great football because that's what he's done all year long. He's done it on the road. He's done it at home, Haley. And look, playing last year and being thrown into the fire was the best thing that happened to Milton because you go in and you make the mistakes and you learn and you're corrected. And then you have the off season where you're continuing to earn the trust of your teammates. They see how hard you work. And then you look this year, the completion percentage is up, the yards, the touchdowns, all that. You know, when I looked at the final rushing numbers, and I know we're going to get to Milton a little bit later on in some of the numbers, I was surprised that the number wasn't higher, but what it shows is his development as a thrower out of the pocket, the ability to throw the ball on the move. I expect Milton to play well, in part because I expect his football team to play well too. The one thing I don't know about Memphis is which Memphis defense is going to show up. And that's the problem for me in this game here. I know what UCF team is going to show up. I don't know what Memphis defense is going to show up, and there's only so much Riley Ferguson can do to cover up for that defense in a game where someone across from you is a real football team with a chance to go do something special.
Well, you talk about the progress that McKenzie Milton has made this year, and I think one of the most interesting stats we were kind of taking a look at, this year he's been sacked 9 times, last year 25 times. So there's obviously a lot of players doing their job around him better this year, but also for himself as well.
Haley, I've argued this for years. People are like, oh, it's all about the quarterback, all about the quarterback. You can have best quarterback on the planet. If you don't have people around him that can't do their job, the quarterback can't do theirs. There are really 2 people on the football field where if the people around them melt down, they can't do what they need to do. And that's the quarterback and the kicker. And look, the kickers are important maybe once a game. The quarterback's important every play of the game. So they got some people around him that are doing a better job. And I think, too, year 2 under Scott Frost, that football team has really gravitated towards his style of coaching and the system he's put into place. That's a big factor, too. They believe down there.
Okay, so something you keep harping on is not knowing which defense is going to show up for Memphis. Obviously, we know we have two great offenses battling it out, but ultimately it seems like you think this game will come down to the defenses. So on the UCF side, they obviously have some big playmakers on their side, and Shaquem Griffin, the reigning Defensive Player of the Year. What have you seen from that UCF defense this year that leads you to believe they will get the job done against the Memphis offense?
They play complementary football. And what I mean by that is that the defense is normally never put in a spot to where they're playing uphill. Rarely is UCF down 14-0 or down by 2 touchdowns to where you take away the aggressiveness out of that defense. So whether they play with the lead, that's great. If it's close, they can still stay within the framework of their scheme and really get after it. And I think that their ability to move Riley Ferguson off the spot, their ability to be able to not give up the deep ball, that's another one. Those are things that I think I can count on with the UCF defense. Whereas with Memphis, I don't know. I think they can move Milton off the spot, but Milton is a little more mobile and I think does a better job inside the framework of the pocket of moving around to continue to create throwing lanes, and then we know he can run. Ferguson is much more of that bigger, taller, stationary, in-the-pocket type quarterback, so I think he's an easier target to be able to get after. But at the end of the day, if Riley Ferguson gets time, we've seen even just last week his ability to put touchdowns up in a hurry with the athletes that Memphis has. But Memphis is going to have to get some stops, especially in the red area. And that's where I wonder about those run-pass options, if they have the ability to handle what UCF's going to throw at them.
So let me ask you this. If you're the head coach of either of these teams, a pretty unique situation getting to play a team again in the same season. I mean, as a coach, you're watching film on your opponents, but you're watching them play other people. But they can actually go back to the film of when they played one another a couple months back. How do you think that approaches the game plan for both of these coaches as they head into a week, a brand new game? Both of these teams have grown, but how do you think it changes the approach?
I don't mean to poo-poo the question. However, they're so different from where they were on September 30th to where they are now. You take into account injuries. There are more that you know about certain players. You have a better evaluation of your offensive and defensive linemen. So while I think it's a part of it, and you're going to look at it and say, okay, what plays did we miss that we could bring back? What are the plays that we burn them on that we can add a wrinkle to kind of disguise it up? In the end of the day, you're really looking at those last 3 games that each team played, because that's the current evaluation of the talent that's going to be on the field come the American Conference Championship game. So I think it's a small part of it, but it's not as big a factor as people may think.
So you're looking at the recent games. What's going on as of late?
Yes, I'll look for wrinkles off the first game, but I'm really looking at those last 3 because those are the Jimmies and the Joes that are going to be out there come this weekend.
Well, something that they can watch film on as of late, especially these past few games, is special teams on both sides. Another topic I'm excited to talk to you about because both teams have some pretty great playmakers on both sides of the ball. For Memphis, it's Tony Pollard, and for UCF, it's Mike Hughes. I mean, these guys, between Tony Pollard, he has 4 kickoff returns for a touchdown this year. Mike Hughes has 2. These are not guys that you want the ball to find on a kickoff.
No, and Haley, it's interesting because we've seen this at the pro level where those guys have the ability, maybe with more consistent and stronger legs, to sort of get that ball up in the air, land it at the goal line, hem people in, and you can control it more. You can control it more at the NFL level. Here's the thing that I don't know. Look, if I'm a head coach on either side, right, okay, there's great returners. I'm not kicking the football to them. If I can, I'm going to pound it through the back of the end zone, but I want to make sure that ball doesn't get into their hands, and if it does, I want to make sure to pin them in so that it's easier for my guys to the wide side of the field to be able to hem the player in, whichever side it is, and then make sure I get the tackle. So I do think that the kickers become a big part of this game in terms of the field position battle as to where those kicks land. If they've got the ability to just blast them out of the back of the end zone, then you're negating a weapon on each side. But if you can't do that consistently, you better make sure that if a ball's going to land on the 5-yard line, dang it, I want it to land between the numbers and the sideline. So I give guys like Tony Pollard very little room to be able to navigate and do what they do best, which is return kicks for touchdowns. So it is negatable. We'll see what the strategy is from each of the coaches in terms of trying to negate 2 really good kick returners.
All right, I want to get some final thoughts from you as we close out this championship preview edition of the American Huddle. For Memphis to win, what do they have to do?
For Memphis to win, they need to get red zone stops. They need to score touchdowns in the red area. They can't be settling for field goals. They got to stress this UCF defense by scoring touchdowns. And look, we just touched on it. I said there's a way to be able to negate it, but if Tony Pollard gets his hand on a football on a kick return, the one thing you can't let him do is dictate field position, because that's the one thing that'll really stress that UCF defense even more than the Memphis offense. So they need to win the battle of field position, and they need to own the red area. If they do that, they got a chance to win this game.
All right, I have to ask you on the other side now. We got some UCF fans out there, too. For the Knights to win, what do they have to do?
I think they got to start fast. That's the one thing UCF has been able to do. Jump out, punch people in the mouth, get a lead, and then ride from there. It's got to be the same modus operandi. They want to jump out early. They want to then lean on their running game and their defense and let Milton go make plays and then turn that defense loose. So I think for them, the quick start is vital. They can't get eaten up on special teams. They have to find a way, Haley, to at least negate that win that Memphis could get through special teams in the return game in terms of field position, and then just go out and do what they've done all year long. Battle, be hard-nosed, and don't let the situation affect you. They did that against USF. I expect them to do that against Memphis. And yes, I'm expecting UCF to win this football game. It might end 70-63, but I think it's more likely to end, 45-40, something like that.
You beat me to my last question. That was
I know, I jumped the gun.
Prediction.
Yes.
Who's going to win it all? I know you think it's going to be a high-scoring game.
I think there's going to be a lot of points. How could I not, considering what we've seen from both these teams all year long? But I will say this from the UCF end. If UCF puts it on Memphis, and I'm talking, let's just say they win 49-14, something like that. This will be UCF's last chance to rabble-rouse relative to the Final Four. They may not get in the college football playoff, but they can make it real complicated on the committee if they go out and they handle Memphis in a big way. That's something to think about if this game starts to get lopsided and people are like, wow, did they pour it on and winning 56-20? No, they didn't, because they're trying to impress a bunch of people who are pretty uneducated, in my opinion, as to how good UCF really is.
Okay, well, what a great way to close out this segment, because this game, I mean, it really is winner take all at this point. The American Championship title, as well as probably a spot in that New Year's Six bowl game.
Whomever wins this game is going to a New Year's Six bowl game. Mark it down.
Mark it down, people. Winner take all.
No one's sliding in to steal the thunder from the American Athletic Conference in what has been another great season.
All right, well, Andy's picked to win it, UCF, but should be a great game. Two great offenses squaring off for the American title. Winner heading to that New Year's Six bowl game in all likeliness. We want to thank you guys for tuning into this special edition of the American Huddle. We're going to be bringing you championship coverage all week long, continue previewing this highly anticipated rematch for the American Football Championship. On behalf of Andy Gresh, I'm Haley Outen. We'll see ya.